Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And welcome to Wednesday's edition of the DCEU Daily. So I'm going to read out to you two articles about DC from Screen Rant first, back to back with no breaks. Then I'm going to give you my views on said articles. I think it's very important I read both of them back to back. Then we will get into it. So let's go. Peacemaker Amanda Waller spin-off in development with Viola Davis. Viola Davis, who portrays Amanda Waller in the DCEU, is in talks to star in her own Suicide Squad and Peacemaker spin-off series on HBO Max by Andy, whose surname I can never pronounce, from Screen Rant. Viola Davis's Amanda Waller is the next Suicide Squad character to get a spin-off series on HBO Max, as Warner Brothers is developing a Peacemaker offshoot. Warner Brothers has been expanding the DCEU onto the small screen ever since the launch of HBO Max a few years ago. While it has served as a vehicle for DC films like Zack Snyder's Justice League, the HBO branded service is also being used to deliver more content from the DCEU in the form of TV shows. Think about this for a minute. How many DC TV shows are there from the DCEU on HBO Max? Just Peacemaker. Just Peacemaker. Think about that for a minute. As James Gunn took over the Suicide Squad franchise, the filmmaker helped bring Peacemaker to life. Starring John Cena as the titular complex hero, Peacemaker Season 1 followed Christopher Smith's life after the events of the Suicide Squad, as he gets involved with a new Argus team. After critical acclaim and high success on the platform, HBO Max proceeded to give it a Season 2 renewal. While there have been talks about more, the Suicide Squad spin-offs being in the works, the next one has now been revealed. Reported by Deadline, HBO Max and Warner Brothers are developing a Peacemaker spin-off around Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. The Oscar-winning star is not only in talks to headline the drama, but also executive produce it, alongside Watchmen writer Crystal Henry. Gunn is involved, as is Peter Safran, who produced the Suicide Squad and executive produced Peacemaker. Plot details about the spin-off are currently being kept under wraps. That's probably because they don't even know what they're going to do, if they're going to do anything. We'll discuss it. And there is currently no time frame for when the show will premiere on HBO Max. Of course there's not. Just like there's no time frame for the J.J. Abrams shows, Justice League Dark Universe shows that they announced 2 years ago. Where are they? So there's no currently time frame for when the show will premiere on HBO Max. Davis first joined the DCEU in 2016 when she brought Amanda to life on the big screen in David Ayer's Suicide Squad. The first film focused on Amanda putting Task Force X together, and she was looking to use incarcerated metahumans and criminals for America's advantage for various covert operations. Amanda returned for the Suicide Squad, which set up her role in Peacemaker Season 1. Even though Amanda has been a crucial player in all of her DCEU appearances, a spin-off show could go even deeper into her complex character. With a renowned actress like Davis, the DCEU has the opportunity to elevate Amanda, including exploring her background, which in the comics is quite extensive. The Peacemaker Suicide Squad offshoot could also serve as a way to focus more on Amanda's relationship with her daughter Leota Abadea, played by Danielle Brooks. As she was introduced in Season 1, with the project being in early development, time will tell where Amanda Waller's Peacemaker and Suicide Squad spin-off goes in the coming months. Nowhere. It's going to go nowhere. Hunter Iggy, Movies TV Mad, have you heard that Dave Chappelle was attacked on stage? Yes, I did hear that. And this is what happens when you keep on pulling people's chain. It doesn't matter if you're an extreme leftist, you're right wing, extreme right. The moment you keep on using your platforms for politics, you're going to trigger people on the opposite side. Would it be nice if we kept our politics to ourselves, did the tick on polling day, and shut the fuck up and enjoyed our lives? But honestly, this is not a platform for politics. This isn't a platform for Dave Chappelle, and I really don't care. So let's continue. So I want to get into this article and what they're saying here after I've read this article. And by the way, Misha Green has taken a picture of herself on Instagram with kind of, I think, a Black Canary book or comic, and basically hinting that she's working on the script for her Black Canary show that's supposed to be on HBO Max. Again, that was announced a while off. We've had nothing. So Toby Emmerich is in overtime. I'll explain to you what's going on here. Black Adam producer explains why Dwayne Johnson's DCEU movie was delayed. One of the producers of Black Adam explains why Dwayne Johnson's anticipated DCEU movie ended up getting delayed until October. Again, by Andy, whose surname I can never pronounce, on screen from Screen Rant. One of the Black Adam producers explains why Dwayne Johnson's anticipated DCEU movie got delayed until October. When it comes to Black Adam's journey as in film, it has been a long one for the DCEU project. Johnson got cast as the iconic DC anti-hero all the way back in September of 2014, when he was initially set to appear as the main foe in Shazam. Imagine how much money Shazam would have made if The Rock was fighting Shazam. Black Adam was fighting Shazam in this movie. Think about that for a minute. Another stupid decision. However, by January 2017, Warner Brothers had decided to feature Black Adam in his own movie that would also depict his origin story before battling Zachary Levi Shazam down the line. Maybe, hopefully, probably. Isn't this the DCEU and WB under Toby and Hamada all over? Following the move to make a Black Adam solo film, it has taken several years for Johnson's DCEU debut to happen, but the movie will finally premiere in 2022. Well, as far as we know. Black Adam, starring Johnson as Tef Adam, follows the DC anti-hero during his days as a slave in Kanta, a fictional North African country, before receiving the godlike abilities that turn him into the titular character from the comics. While the DC universe knows of him as an antagonist, the DCEU property is reimagining Black Adam as an anti-hero. Black Adam was initially slated to hit theaters in December 2021, got pushed back because of the COVID-19 pandemic, even though it had been rescheduled for July 29th, 2022. Warner Brothers had to tinker with the DCEU schedule again and push Black Adam back to October 21st, 2022. While Black Adam is less than 6 months away, we hope, from arriving in theaters, what was the ultimate cause of Johnson's film being delayed? In a new interview with The Wrap, Hiram Garcia, president of Johnson's $7 production and one of the producers on Black Adam, chatted about the core reason why Warner Brothers had to push the film back for a few months. With the big production commitment that Black Adam had, Garcia spoke heavily about the VFX being a major aspect of why they had to get some extra time to finish post-production work, sharing the following. I think we're just in a world right now where there was a huge and understandable freeze-up when the pandemic hit, and a lot of productions were put on hold. Now that the industry has really roared back, the pipeline for VFX is so jammed. Obviously, all these superhero movies just require so much VFX, and we're just in a situation where the majority of the VFX houses are just completely swamped with work. I think that's why you saw seismic shifts across the board, and you continue to see those giant properties just moving further down the line. It's just a matter of the vendors being able to accommodate the amount of VFX they have to do, the shots that have to be done. They're busting their ass, and we're so grateful for all those VFX houses. It feels like things are starting to calibrate, and I think you'll start to feel less shifts down the line. Wouldn't that be good, Mr. Garcia? Wouldn't that be good, WB? Wouldn't that be good, Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada? But those shifts are not going to stop, because this is a lie. The delay of Black Adam has nothing to do with VFX houses being jam-packed. VFX houses, there's a lot of them, right? It's nonsense. We've seen many, many huge VFX movies during the pandemic actually go out on their proper dates. Garcia makes a great point. No, he doesn't. that even though things are starting to roll back to normal, there are still after effects for Hollywood productions like Black Adam. That's why it makes sense that most VFX houses are still behind, and the visual effects are ultimately a major component, especially for superhero movies. Black Adam was just one of 4 DCEU films that had to shuffle around its release date, as Shazam! Fury of the Gods, The Flash, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom had to move on new slots as well. So if that's the case, why have test screenings, and I can attest to this, no pun intended, why have test screenings of the Flash movie shown a movie with full VFX, not half-done VFX, proper VFX? He is lying. Black Adam will serve as a crucial chapter for the DCEU, primarily because it's introducing Shazam's iconic nemesis. In addition to that, Johnson's origin story will also see the cinematic debut of the Justice Society of America, the Golden Age superhero team in the DC universe. Members like Dr. Fate, Hawkman, Cyclone, and Atom Smasher will be jumping from the panel to screen, played by Pierce Brosnan, Aldis Hodge, Quintessa Swindell, and Noah Centineo, respectively. With HBO Max, there are also apparently talks of some Black Adam spin-offs, perhaps something based around the JSA. Despite the many delays, it is looking more and more like Black Adam will be worth the wait. Let's hope so, whenever we actually see it. So let's get into this. I am fed up of franchise movies and franchise television. I'm fed up. I'm fed up of the incompetence. I'm fed up of the incompetence of Walter Hamada, Toby Emmerich, and them constantly trying to dig themselves out of a hole publicly by announcing other things that have never happened. And this guy Garcia coming out with the big bullshit that Black Adam was delayed because of VFX houses being jam-packed. That is not true. The reason Black Adam was delayed and the reason Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom was delayed was nothing to do with VFX. Look, movies can always do with a touch-up. You know, people who make movies are always glad of the delays. But that's not why. All these films changed dates, including Shazam! Fury of the Gods being moved up to this December because the Flash movie was delayed, right? Now, another reason for these delays, of course, is because they only had like one project for 2023, so they had to do something. So first of all, I would ask Mr. Garcia, wouldn't it make more sense, COVID pandemic or not, when we schedule a film, we think about how long it's going to take to write the script, make the film, do post and everything, and VFX and everything, before we actually schedule a release date. But not only that, considering I come from theatre productions where we do the same, when we schedule a theatre production, we have to write the scripts, of course, we have to adapt, we have to rehearse, and then we do something else, which I think is common sense. We think about, you know, maybe Mother Nature. We think about delays that can happen, right, automatically. And we put a date in that can kind of give us plenty of time to do everything. So disasters can happen, right? We were hit at my production company, my theatrical company here in Cyprus during the pandemic. We all were. People understood that. But when we were allowed to go back in, we took the precautions and we did what we had to do. These people are claiming that they didn't plan for their production to be delayed. They didn't plan for anything. These people are either incompetent, which is utterly believable, or Mr. Garcia is actually lying. There are no traffic jams at VFX houses. That's not why these 4 movies were delayed. Answer me this, Mr. Garcia. First of all, I've already mentioned the fact that the Flash test screening has a ready-to-go VFX, beautiful VFX-ready movie, right? Explain that to me. Are you claiming the Flash movie was done and dusted before the pandemic? Well, it wasn't. It was being made during the pandemic. How did they do the VFX then? You are lying. You are covering up. And let's look at the timing of all of this. This interview where he talks about the delays, the reasons for the delays of Black Adam, right? That's one. Let's look at the timing. Misha Green on a sunbed teasing Black Canary, right? Number 2, the announcement that apparently, potentially, right, which is what they said on the Hollywood Reporter, potentially there is an Amanda Waller series on HBO Max in development, potentially, right? That's number 3. Look at the timing of all of this. This coincides with 2 or 3 days ago, them announcing that Wonder Twins had been cancelled. So wait a minute. You cancelled Wonder Twins, right? Something that could have been kind of interesting to children and a mainstream audience. And now you've announced something else which has no interest to anyone. Bat Super VFX delays is code word for, oh my God, we need to fix this mess of a shared cinematic universe. Basically, he is lying. Well done for being one of those of the consumers who actually understands, who actually listens to me. That's why they're suddenly coming out with an Amanda Waller series. That's why Misha Green, the writer-director of Black Canary, right, even though she's barely wrote and she hasn't directed anything, right? This is why she's laying on a sunbed teasing you about a project that may never happen, right? And this is why we're now hearing about an Amanda Waller show in development. They said in the article that she's in talks. She's not in talks, right? I'll tell you why she's not in talks. Because when you sign up to be part of a franchise, you sign a contract. And what it is, it's a rolling contract. So if they want you to do a spin-off, you've signed. You have to do it. You have no choice, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So apparently she's going to be a producer on this, right? Who knows, right? Let's look at the other projects they've been announcing in the past couple of years. J.J. Abrams' Justice League Dark Universe, announced 2 years ago. A Zatanna movie, announced 2 years ago, right? Constantine, announced 2 years ago. Where are the J.J. Abrams projects? Where are they, J.J.? Where are your projects, J.J.? J.J., I can't hear you. Where are they? Where is your movie, your Superman movie, produced by your good self and written by Ta-Nehisi Coates? We heard you were going to cast a Superman of color. Now we're hearing it's going to make space for Henry Cavill in the DCEU, and now any ethnicity can audition. Really? Right. So that was 2 years ago. Where is that film? Where is it? Where is it? Who's the director? Nothing. Do you understand? This is comparable to what they did last year when Ray Fisher couldn't shut up about the problems on the Justice League reshoots, and they announced Jason Momoa in an animated Frosty movie. Where is the Frosty movie? Where is the Frosty movie? It's nowhere. Because you know what? There is no Frosty movie. There is no J.J. Abrams Justice League Dark Universe. There is no Amanda Waller series. And by the way, Amanda Waller is just another Boba Fett. Amanda Waller is great in a Suicide Squad movie or showing up a couple of times in a Peacemaker series, but you give her 6 to 8 to 10 episodes. Are you ready to sit through 10 episodes of Amanda Waller? And what DC fan really is going to be, when you hear about it, I used to be excited about these projects that never happened. But now when you think about it, why do I want to see an Amanda Waller series? If it actually happens, which it won't. But as usual, all the stands are getting excited. It's funny, you know. When these projects are announced, when Misha Green is laying on a sunbed, right, teasing us about Black Canary, something else that will never happen, right? You know, you think about it and you think, who cares? Does the mainstream audience care? No. When the MCU teases something, everyone's talking about it. It's trending, right? Look at the trends. It's only trending with the stands. Nobody cares about the DCEU apart from us stands. There lies the problem. It has no mainstream consumer confidence or branding on it. And this is what David Zaslav has been doing. So David Zaslav in Discovery cancelled Wonder Twins, so in riposte, basically Toby Emmerich, who's drowning, who's about to lose his job because his contract ain't being renewed, baby, as far as I know, right? He does what he always does, like he did with the Frosty animated film starring Jason Momoa, which never happened, which will never happen, certainly not with Jason Momoa. So he does what he always does. He shits himself, so he tries to distract. Oh my God, Zaslav's just cancelled one of my projects. Oh, yeah, Hiram, say something about the delays. It's all normal. It's all natural. There's no problem. We didn't delay them for any reason, even though Black Adam, The Flash, Aquaman, and Shazam Fury of the Gods, all these films were delayed, right, a week after the Batman had We Need Heroes in 2022 trailer playing before the Batman movie. And even after they announced the cancellations and the change of the schedule, they were still playing that. So a week before there was no problem with the VFX, and a week after you decided there was a problem with the VFX and you needed longer. Absolute nonsense. And by the way, Hiram, if that's the case, why are you and Shazam Fury of the Gods filming extensive reshoots right now next door to each other? Can you tell me about that, Hiram? Why wasn't you asked about that, Hiram? Because you and I know, Hiram, you're talking absolute shit. There's no VFX delays. There's no VFX log jams at VFX houses. You are bullshitting us. Those delays were made for creative reasons and creative problems. Also, those delays were made because this company had jack shit apart from Blue Beetle to go out next year. What about Batgirl? Where's Batgirl's date? Why wasn't Batgirl announced at CinemaCon? Why didn't Batgirl have a panel? Why did the Batman 2 have a panel when we won't be seeing that film at least till 2025, if we're lucky, 2024, right? Why wasn't, by the way, why weren't they talking about the Penguin and the Arkham shows on HBO Max at CinemaCon, which will hit much sooner than the Batman 2? Can't you see, everyone? This is what they do. This is what they do. Toby Emmerich gets something cancelled. One of his actors gets exposed like Amber Heard or Ezra Miller, and it's announcement. So let me tell you straight, so you absolutely understand what's going on here. There is no Amanda Waller series. Neither would you want one. You would be bored by episode 3. I'm sure there's an interesting story to tell. She's going to be a producer. One of the writer of Damon Lindelof's Watchmen is going to be penning this. I think we all know the SJW way they're planning for this series that's never going to happen to go. So let them keep on announcing. But the Amanda Waller series will never happen. J.J. Abrams' Justice League Dark Universe on HBO Max will never happen. Tanashi Coach Superman will probably be restructured, but who knows? And that probably won't happen. And apparently a couple of weeks ago, Blue Beetle went into production. I haven't heard anything since. What's going on here, everyone? Well, I've explained to you what's going on. Exactly what I said. There is a civil war because for some reason David Zaslav didn't grab hold of Toby Emmerich and kick him up the arse from the moment he arrived. But he doesn't seem to be getting a new contract right now. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he will actually get one. Bad Super, Zack Snyder announced a JL Dark movie 2 years ago. Cameras would have started rolling a long time ago. Well, normally, if anyone announced this 2 years ago, but where are these projects, Bat Super? Where are they? They're nowhere. They announced all these plans. Walter Hamada and Toby Emmerich had big plans. And Dan Sarnoff, who's gone now, had big plans for the DCEU. They were greenlighting HBO Max stuff galore, movies galore. They had a plan. They were going to reboot the universe in the Flash movie, then go full speed ahead. We were going to get 4 movies this year, maybe 5 if the original idea was to release Batgirl this year as well. But they had nothing apart from Blue Beetle planned for next year, which is strange, right? So one of the things I've said, why didn't they originally just say, right, we've got Aquaman, The Flash, Blue Beetle in 2023. We've got Shazam Fury of the Gods, Black Adam and the Batman in 2022. It still doesn't explain what's going on with Batgirl. So basically, it's easy to undermine these people. It's easy to expose that Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada are lost. Because Warner Brothers Pictures right now is a company that's just been taken over. and the new people are telling them, stop green lighting, leave it. We have big decisions to make. One of the things that David Zaslav has to do at the WB Discovery up front on May the 18th is make it clear who the boss is, who's running DC, what the future of DC is, what the future of the Harry Potter IP is, everything. He has to put everything on the line and say it. He's had a year to plan this. He's planned it. But meanwhile, he cancels Wonder Twins, and Toby Emmerich, a couple of days later, conveniently as a writer-director on a sunbed, teasing something. We've got an announcement for a DC HBO Max show, apparently, potentially, an Amanda Waller show. By the way, potentially means maybe, probably not, right? Potentially doesn't mean definitely, right? So why did they release this news yesterday? To divert from the fact that the DCEU is a clusterfuck, and Zaslav is saying we are restructuring, we are overhauling, but they want you to think everything in the garden is rosy, and these things were delayed for a reason, logjams in VFX houses, which is not true. I dispersed that myth weeks ago. I told you from the very beginning, when I knew and I told you about the Flash being delayed and the other things being rescheduled, there was a deeper reason than VFX. VFX is an easy excuse. But again, they can't prove it. If VFX is actually the problem, right, why don't you send me proof of the logjam? Send the consumer, post it on Twitter, show us how many VFX houses are there. Now, don't forget, in 1976, when they started making Superman the movie, right, they didn't even have VFX houses. They had a couple of effects houses, right, which is kind of today's VFX, but they didn't have a lot. So most of it was done in camera, which was impossible. That's why Superman the movie was one of the longest taking movies to make ever, because they were breaking ground with VFX. So where are these projects? There's no projects. They just keep on announcing. So it's going to be very, very interesting on May the 18th, what David Zaslav says, because it's what he doesn't say that could be even more telling. Just like AT&T, this merger with Warner Media from Discovery has been bought on debt. They're desperate to make money. That's why they want to launch the DC with a recognizable brand and make quick money. That's why they want Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, because if the movies are made right, they can make quick money. Is this just another smash and grab like AT&T's acquisition of Warner was? Is this just another likely lads company who will make some money or get the company in even more debt and move on? Is there even any longevity? Is David Zaslav everything we think he is, or is it just another likely lad? What's going on here? We will find out on May the 18th if everything that's been said around David Zaslav is true, because the Amanda Waller show, you're never going to see it. The Black Canary show, you're never going to see it. The J.J. Abrams Justice League Dark Universe, you're never going to see it. They're just announcing stuff that's never going to be done. Because, after all, where is it after 2 years? Now, don't get me wrong. HBO Max would be well served to have a J.J. Abrams Justice League Dark Universe on HBO Max. It would be well served to have an Amanda Waller show, even though it's not something that I'm interested in. And I think she's like Boba Fett, as I've already said, right? You like her when you see her with other characters, but when she actually turns up on her own, she's like Boba. She's pointless, right? And she's boring. So, that's how I feel about that. So I had to laugh when all these things were coming up all of a sudden. This Amanda Waller series being announced, Misha Green on a sunbed, teasing Black Canary. I just thought, wow, this is suspicious, right? 2 days after they cancelled Wonder Twins, right? You cancel Wonder Twins and you're doing Amanda Waller. It doesn't make sense, right? Let's look at the timing of Wonder Twins, right? Just so I can prove to you what I've been saying. So, in February, they announced Wonder Twins. A week or two ago, they announced KJ Apa as playing one of the Wonder Twins. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks later, now that announcement was made a couple of days before or after Zaslav and Discovery took over. Think about this for a minute. So A week or two after they announced KJ Apa as the star of Wonder Twins, a very famous young man doing great, pulling it up on Riverdale for all these years, right? Exciting. I was excited. I don't know Wonder Twins, but having him involved kind of piqued my interest as well. A week or two later, they're cancelling Wonder Twins. So how can you trust a company that announces a project in February, announces its casting last week, and then a week later cancels Wonder Twins? Should I explain to you what's going on? Let me reiterate to you what's going on. You have Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada over at WB Pictures, making these plans, announcing these things, doing these castings. Then you've got David Zaslav saying, oh, no, you don't. We don't want this. This is not what we want. We want Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. We want to make quick and easy money, and they're the characters that we want. And you haven't got a defined universe. There's no branding. There's no excitement. We need the excitement and the hype that the MCU has when they release something, when they greenlight something. That's what we need. But instead, we've got Arrowverse, we've got Titans, we've got Doom Patrol, we've got Superman and Lois, we've got different shows on the CW. Nobody knows what belongs to what. So what Discovery are saying is, can we please just have one defined universe and have some spin-offs on HBO Max slowly? Don't greenlight them all at once like you've been doing. Let's go a bit slower. Let's build something out. Warner Brothers Discovery and David Zaslav have a long-term plan for DC live action, a good long-term plan. So right now, it's an interesting time because when someone takes over a company, they've got all this stuff to deal with. So all these things have been announced, and Zaslav and Discovery have to decide if this is a good plan. Misha Green is a great writer-director. Her Black Canary would be awesome if it ever happens. Who knows? Who knows? Viola Davis is a great actor. Her Amanda Waller is brilliant. Her best appearance in the first Suicide Squad. I don't think James Gunn did a particularly great job with her. I think whoever rewrote her, rewrote what David did for the first Suicide Squad movie, did Viola justice. She was done really well because she's ruthless. And she's not as ruthless under James Gunn, neither in the Suicide Squad or in Peacemaker. But when I saw the Amanda Waller in the first Suicide Squad, I thought, wow, this is Amanda Waller from the animated shows, from the comics. And she is interesting. But a whole series about her, I hope you're going to do it well. I hope you're going to do it justice if we actually see it. You see, it's the old-fashioned saying, the left arm doesn't know what the right arm is doing. You've got the new boys, Zaslav and Discovery, cancelling a movie. Then you've got the old boys greenlighting another one and getting people to try and put confidence into the brand, like Misha Green on the Sunbed, like the Viola Davis, Amanda Waller show being greenlit, right? But it's just for show. It's just to distract from what's going on with Amber Heard and Ezra Miller and the mess of what's been going on with delaying these movies. And God knows. And, you know, if Hiram Garcia is saying his movie was delayed for VFX, where is Andy Muschietti? Where is Ezra Miller? Why wasn't they at the panel, the Flash panel at CinemaCon? Why weren't they there? Oh, and by the way, something else happened yesterday. I'm sure it's just merely a coincidence to prove my point. Yesterday, one of the actors of Shazam! Fury of the Gods leaked Rachel Ziegler in her armor for the movie. And he says, I'm allowed to do this. Basically, I'm allowed to do this. So I don't care that you leaked it. It doesn't matter because the whole script has been leaked online anyway. I know exactly what happens in this movie, and you can check out my video where I talk about it. You'll know all about it as well. So the more deeper we look at the DCEU, the bastardized DCEU under Hamada and Emmerich since Zach's left, it's an absolute mess. And they keep on digging themselves holes after holes after holes. They don't know what's going to happen. That's the truth. They don't know what's going to be kept, what's going to be cancelled, what films we'll see, what films and TV shows we'll never see. It's an absolute mess. So at DC Discovery up front, we need to finally know what the fuck's going on. In other news, right, I'm going to end off today talking about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I saw this film yesterday. I said to you that I wouldn't give you spoilers, and I won't, but the film is a clusterfuck. The film is a mess. The film is not a film. Oh, yes, there's some interesting cameos, not as interesting as we thought. Interesting cameos, the VFX good. It is a mad, kind of crazy 2 hours, but the narrative is skewed, it's messy, and a lot of people have complained about this movie. Now, I'm going to make a point, because people have tried to throw Sam Raimi under the bus for this. So I'm going to read you something by someone from Collider trying to do that very thing. So give me a moment to warm my phone up, because I did switch it off, and we're going to talk about this, because this is what happens. When something goes wrong for the MCU, it's always blame somebody else, but don't blame Kevin Feige. By the way, who is the hands-on president of Marvel Studios? Kevin Feige. Who employed the writer, Michael Waldron? Kevin Feige. Who decided to drive Scott Derrickson out because he dared at convention to say it was going to be a really scary horror movie, right? Kevin Feige. It's it's Kevin Feige's fault that this movie is a clusterfuck. So let's go to Twitter. So if you give me some time, we'll warm Twitter up. Twitter always needs warming up. I certainly warm it up once I get on there. But anyway, right, let's do this. So let me find what I'm looking for, and I'm going to give you an example here, right? Here we are. This is, right, and this is one person I do not like. This is everything that's wrong with discourse about entertainment today. Now, this is by John Rocha, aka The Outlaw, right? So he's been on Collider for years. I don't know if he's still on Collider, but he's everything that's wrong with reviewing films, critical media, and everything. He's everything I don't like. So let's have a look at what he's got to say. Sadly, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is a disappointing entry into the MCU. What I feared about Sam Raimi directing this movie came true. He brought his stuck-in-the-past 1990s approach to a 2022 film. Hang on. Spider-Man was celebrating 20 years yesterday, right? It came out 2000, right? 2001, whatever, right? And that wasn't a stuck-in-the-mud, old-fashioned movie. It was very relevant to that time. I don't get it. So now you're saying, after he did those films, right, and they were modern, you're saying his take is stuck in the mud and set back in the 90s anyway. 1990s approach to a 2022 film, and it's irritatingly out of step with what? With what the Marvel Universe has created. Now, this is interesting because this is one thing they're all saying now. The ones trying to throw Sam under the bus and protect Feige, that it's because of him and because of the way he does things. Anyway, so this is out of touch with the Marvel Universe, what the Marvel Universe has created. He brings the worst of 1970s schlock horror here, complete with cheesy dialogue, implausible storylines, and betrays the Marvel characters within his movie. Right. Did Sam Raimi write the dialogue, as he's saying? No. Michael Waldron did. Why isn't he outing Michael Waldron? Because Michael Waldron was put in his position by Kevin Feige. If he has a go at Waldron, whose fault it actually was for this dialogue, and not Sam Raimi, who merely just about directed this movie, right? He has to admit that Kevin Feige is a hack and he got something wrong. But I know, let's lie. Let's pretend the dialogue is Sam Raimi's fault. So, where are we? There will be those Raimi fans who will defend it and use the tide of an old excuse. Oh, you mean the same excuse that you're using, that this is all Sam Raimi's fault anyway. And by the way, if I felt Sam was to blame for this movie, I would politely and constructively say so. Bad Super, Marvel Studios do not deserve Sam Raimi. No, they don't. That we just don't get it. But there's frighteningly little to get here, including an insultingly tiny backstory for one of the main characters of color. Of course, it's all about the characters of color. Again, nothing to do with Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi said he had creative freedom, but Sam was lying. They all say they have creative freedom on these movies. They are lying, right? Kevin Feige is the showrunner. He actually takes the scripts once they're written. He rewrites them himself. He basically even tells the directors what to do. But you're blaming Sam Raimi for a character of color not getting a good backstory. Now, there are some visually stunning moments and incredible VFX. Also, here we go. Elizabeth Olsen is at the top of her game. Oh, yeah. It's all about Elizabeth Olsen, not Benedict Cumberbatch. How insulted must you be if you're him? But, of course, he's an SJW as well, so he'll be loving all this anyway. Cameos and surprises are great moments in the movie for any Marvel fan, but it's all just not enough to save this movie, which left me feeling very empty afterwards and hoping a better director is brought in to bring out the best elements that a Doctor Strange movie can possess. Wait a minute. Are you telling me now that Sam Raimi isn't a good director? That's what you're saying, right? I didn't misread that. Did you just say that Sam Raimi, the director of Evil Dead, the director of multiple movies, the director of Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, one of the best comic book movies of all time, isn't a good director? That's what you're saying, Russia, isn't it? You critics, you bloggers are the fucking worst. What right do you have to sit there and call this guy a bad director and blame him for what's happened here when you know full well Scott Derrickson was sacked by Kevin Feige? Michael Waldron, the writer of this film, the hack writer who did Loki as well, was brought on by Kevin Feige. So how can you blame dialogue on Sam Raimi when he didn't write anything? He didn't write anything. So why is it his fault? Few months ago, we found out there was reshoots. Kevin Feige says it was to add more cameos. He was lying. Do you know whose fault it is for the bad dialogue and everything else that happened? The movie being shunted down to 2 hours. It's not Sam Raimi. I'm not going to make excuses for Sam and the way he thinks and writes. He hasn't written this movie. He hasn't written a job this movie. Do you know why they brought him on? Because he was a name. Because Kevin Feige got in a mess with Multiverse of Madness, fell out with the first director, and quickly needed someone famous to put a face to this movie, this calamity of a movie. Because it's all garnish to these studios, especially Kevin Feige. So he thought, I know, right? We'll cut the film down, right? Because obviously they'd already come up with what the film was going to be with Scott. Scott had his idea it was going to be a really deep, dark horror movie type of movie. Feige said no. Disney said no. Well, after months of development, right, they were in trouble and they quickly had to make this movie. In came Sam Raimi, who was a name. He did Spider-Man. This would fit perfectly. Sam Raimi did a favor for a friend, right? That's all it was. He came in, did his best, didn't have enough time to perfect the movie, was told to make certain decisions in the movie. That's not Sam's fault. So I don't have to defend the kind of 70s stuff or the early 90s stuff. Forget about all of that. But if you don't like the dialogue, blame Michael Waldron. If you don't like this movie, blame Kevin Feige. But don't you ever blame Sam Raimi for stuff he doesn't do. Don't you ever say, hopefully we get a good director. He is a good director. He's a great director. And he's a damn good, fine human being. But like everyone in Hollywood, he has to do as he's told. Why do you think he was sitting there during the marketing and barely talking about the actual movie? He was diverting to, yeah, I'd love to make Spider-Man 4. Then 2 days later saying, I've got no plans to make Spider-Man 4 because it was all a distraction. It's exactly what Toby and Hamada do over at the DCEU. Because everybody at the MCU, and especially Sam Raimi, knew he was sitting on a fucking bomb that was about to explode. So now everyone's gonna blame Raimi. They're not gonna blame Kevin Feige. This is how it works. And Kevin Feige's gonna be quite happy with Sam getting the blame. And Sam's a gentleman, so he will keep his mouth shut. But it's not very nice to ruin the legacy and the image amongst the consumer with a director like Sam. This film is not his fault. It's their fault. They got it wrong. They had a really, really dark, gritty, sublime movie under Scott Derrickson. But they decided to sack him for creative differences. The differences were he wanted a dark, scary movie, which would have been awesome, but they don't like films like that because they're aiming at children and families. That's the problem with them. Why did they bring Scott in for the first film in the first place? By the way, Scott did a great job with the first film, and I really like the first Doctor Strange, right? It didn't have the attention and make the money the others do, but it was a good, singular, standalone movie, and it set up everything beautifully. Scott is a great director, and his career is going very well right now as he's working on a couple of new projects. If they allowed Scott creative control, this film would have been amazing. But no, they cut away everything dark that Scott did, brought in Sam. It's exactly like the Justice League situation. They wanted Joss to create miracles. They gave him a short schedule, he was under pressure, and he exploded and took it out on everyone else. I'm not surprised. And here they brought in Sam because he's Sam, said, right, this is what we're doing very quickly, go and do it quickly. And they expected him to deliver something amazing. And now you're going to blame him for a movie that he didn't write? No, I'm sorry. You people need to be exposed. You are now going to spend the next few weeks throwing Sam Raimi under the bus to protect Kevin Feige, and it's playing wrong. And every time I see it on my social media, I am going to expose you because it's not right and it's not fair. Now, a lot of things in this industry happen that are not right and not fair. But when I identify them on my platforms, I will expose them every time. You can all be assured of that. Bat Super, Marvel? No, right. Bat Super. I dislike the idea of a Kevin Feige type person running everything. This is the problem. This is the problem. Let's look at the job Kevin Feige's done. He has created an interconnected universe that is the most popular franchise of all time. Nobody makes the money that they make. It's been successful. And I think Phase 1 worked. I mean, at the beginning of Phase 1, people hated Feige and wanted him out. But once they saw what he was doing in terms of the first Avengers, and they said, fucking hell, yeah, we were wrong. So Phase 1 is brilliant. There's a couple of films that don't work totally, but Phase 1, all in all, is great. Phase 2 is great. Phase 3 is great. There's some mistakes in Phase 3, but basically, he did it. He pulled it off. An interconnected franchise. It ain't an easy thing to do within movies. But ever since Phase 4 started, it's obvious that Feige is being pressured to be a bit more inclusive, to be a bit more extreme left. And it's bothering him creatively. And he keeps on dropping the ball. The decision to kill off Black Widow at the end of Endgame and bring her back in a Black Widow movie when he should have given her a movie after The Incredible Hulk is ridiculous. Mistake number one. We had the Shang-Chi discourse. Shang-Chi isn't a bad Marvel movie. I quite enjoyed it. But we had the lead actor going out there with all his SJW comments. He didn't help the situation. Now, Eternals is actually a unique film that clearly, for once in the MCU's history, they let a director do pretty much what she wanted with. And actually, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that it was an individual, unique movie. Nothing in that film triggers me. I think it's kind of an interesting film. For once, they made a movie maker's film. Probably won't happen again. A lot of critics hated it because this is what happens now. If you notice what critics say, going against the Marvel formula doesn't work. What do you mean? So going against cameos and bad storytelling in a movie everyone's going to forget is a bad thing because you're focusing on box office and what you want to see. But that's the problem the MCU has. We're going to be told about the MCU formula. But what is the MCU formula? We had them making proper real movies with Iron Man in Phase 1. Most of Phase 2 really were real movies, not like we're getting now. And Phase 3 kind of stepped away from it, but still, a little bit we were getting good movies. But you did notice in Phase 3 how they were adding more cameos into people's movies and kind of sidelining the lead characters. So they started cheating. That's why the origin movies were breaking origin movie box office records. The MCU I prefer is definitely Phase 1 because they really tried their best to be honest with the characters, as they did in Joss Whedon's first two Avengers movie. But the more they did their research and noticed everyone liked the cameos and their Easter eggs, they thought they could get away with not writing good films and not writing good characters, adapting these characters properly. And ever since the Disney Plus Marvel days, it's been an absolute calamity. What is the Marvel formula? What they did in phase 1 and 2, or what they're doing now? Well, I like the Marvel formula they started with. It didn't make them as much money. Here's the thing. And now people like Russia think they know best. What they know is to throw a director under the bus and protect their man Feige. But how long can you protect him for? Because everyone can see what's going on. The truth of the matter is, and this was never going to happen, and as a business person, I can understand why, the MCU should have finished at the end of Endgame, just like Arrowverse should have finished at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths. But business is business. Let's keep on milking the cow. It had finished. But of course, they're not going to finish the MCU. What they could have done after Endgame, instead of creating a new phase, they could have done some offshoot movies, interesting movies that get good directors in that actually make real movies. It would have been more interesting. A Daredevil movie starring Charlie Cox, things like that, offshoots. Go a different direction. By trying to do what they kept on doing already, they can't do it as well as they used to. And that's the problem. You get a situation like Doctor Strange because the problem is Kevin Feige is working in the confines of Disney, a place that's becoming more and more extreme left, a place that's there for families and children. And James Gunn found out to his detriment, you can't behave certain ways when you work for Disney. So they won't let you go R-rated. You know, Ryan Reynolds is having the same problems with them now because he wants to do a really dark R-rated Deadpool 3. And you can understand why. So Marvel are in trouble. The DCEU are in trouble and have always been in trouble. As I said in the beginning of today's DCEU Daily, I am sick to death of franchises. But super, I think a shared universe can exist without a Kevin Feige type person. Wouldn't it be better if the directors craft a plan together? It's interesting. You don't want a situation where you've got a group of directors planning a universe. What you would want is one director. So if we go back to Indiana Jones, the first 3 movies, you have George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, 2 of the most talented men in film of all time. But they were friends. They could work together. Now, they disagreed about Indy 4 and the alien stuff. Steven didn't want to do that. He warned George, and George didn't listen because George has got an imagination. There, that's how that went wrong on a small scale. So with the DCEU, you had Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan with Man of Steel. That's why Man of Steel went really well, mostly. The killing of Zod was a controversial moment. But then you get rid of Nolan and Goya, and then you bring in other elements, and then you've got Jeff Johns in the background, not liking what Snyder's doing either. It becomes a bit of a mess. Too many cooks spoil the broth. That's the one good thing about what Feige is doing over at the MCU. It's just him. He's the boss. But I tell you what's going on with Feige. He's tired. He's tired. He's running out of juice. He came up with a great idea. He did 3 phases of that idea. And really, even the idea of this person manipulating the multiverse and causing trouble and seeing what happened in No Way Home is a really good idea on its own. And expanding on that on a Doctor Strange sequel and calling it the Multiverse of Madness is an excellent idea. And Scott Derrickson's original plan for that movie was a great idea. But as someone who runs a franchise, when you start not listening to directors, Kevin Feige may be a producer and have experience, but he doesn't understand the full elements of storytelling like a director does. If they allowed him to go dark, they would have. What I mean is, if they allowed him to go dark, they would have succeeded. But this is the problem. It's not entirely their fault either, because they have this business that's for families and for children, and they're not willing to break that, because once they break that, they will get complaints from family groups, and this is the problem that Disney have. Meanwhile, over at Warner Brothers and Discovery will take advantage of this, is that Warner Brothers don't have a family-friendly reputation. They can do animation. They started Looney Tunes in the 30s. So they can do animation. They can do animated DC movies, and they do them really well. But they can do horror movies. They can do superhero, R-rated stuff. They can do family-friendly stuff like Shazam. They can do whatever they want. And as long as they execute it well, they can get away with it. This is something I've said about Disney for many, many years. Kevin Feige has come to a time now where he can't take the MCU any further. He can't do that because it's owned by Disney. Then we have this situation in California about not saying a certain word. And you have Disney not saying anything about it, and then Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios making their own situation. What's best for Marvel Studios right now is if they manipulate a way to leave Disney. And I think that's very, very difficult. Buying them out. And I think Disney would do everything to stop this because Marvel Studios is the most profitable thing in entertainment today. They need to have a civil war. They need to free themselves from the grip from Disney. So today's DC live action headlines. It's been reported that Viola Davis is in negotiations for Amanda Waller HBO Max show. We've also had Misha Green, the writer and director, apparently the alleged writer and director of Black Canary on HBO Max, on a sunbed, teasing her development of a Black Canary movie or series. We're hearing a lot of things. We're hearing a lot of teases. But ultimately, it's all distraction, everyone. As I said on top of the show, you probably will never see the Amanda Waller show. Now, apparently this is produced by James Gunn, but he doesn't seem to have any other creative responsibility on it. Because if this really was James Gunn's baby, he would be on his Twitter and Instagram shouting from the rooftops about it. But he hasn't said a word about it. Is it possible that Emmerich and Hamada have already stabbed another director in the back? But this time it's not Zack Snyder, it's James Gunn. Isn't that interesting, everyone? But super, I like the way Snyder set up the DCEU, and he would have worked with the other directors to make everything connect. I feel like other directors would have more creative control in a situation like Bat Super than the directors under Feige. Yeah, because Zack is a director himself, he would set the premise of the franchise. He let David Ayer do whatever he did, whatever he wanted with the Echo. So he gave him the freedom. That's what the studio didn't like. There was no one policing anyone. Studios want to police things because it's their money and they don't want something that's going to lose the money going out there. But with creativity, you've got to take risks. In the old days, in the 80s, the 70s, even the 60s, the 90s, even the early noughties, studios took risks. What's happened with the superhero trend, they want to take less and less risks and not make movies, but make things that make them money. And when you try and do that and not listen to what directors are telling you, that's how you get yourself in trouble. That's how the DCEU has got itself in trouble. And that's how Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness went from having a great director who was going to do a dark and scary horror multiversal movie to what we got, which is a nothing movie. Think about that. We have this Everything Everywhere All at Once, right? It's an A24 production. They did the multiverse better than a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. Marvel have actually got, an A to Z of how to do a multiversal story in their comics. DC started the multiversal stories. They can just refer back to their comics. It's not difficult. Think about that for a minute. That DC and Marvel live action are failing in the multiverse, but a bunch of people who know jack shit created an original, real-world story about the multiverse. Yes, my friends, A24 is the future. Warner Brothers, Disney, DC, the MCU are the past. Can you see the worm turning? This has been the DCEU Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again tonight for Movies TV Mad Live at 6 p.m. Nothing in this world will stop me going live here on YouTube, going on TikTok, and going on my other platforms. So look forward to seeing a lot more of me. Bat Super, I hope people grow tired of cookie cutter MCU. We need filmmaker-driven superhero films. We need director-driven movies, full stop. Not just superhero films. Bat Super, see you next stream. See you later, Bat Super. Until I see you all again, thank you for the views. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the support. The platform is all the better for you coming here every time. I'll see you tonight. Till then, goodbye. Thank you. Have a great day.